Hey, Steve, welcome, welcome.
Hey Val, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so for those who are listening, divorce lawyers, Steve, he is a legal business development guru. He has written 4 books relating to legal business development and about how you can attract great clients, have a profitable practice, how you can do all of that without it consuming and ruining your life in the process. So being a well-rounded person. And so basically, really focusing on about how do we live life better as lawyers and also be good at our law jobs and succeed in that, which is amazing. Steve has a podcast called Be That Lawyer where he focuses on all those topics. You'll find that on your favorite podcast app. And he has not 1, but 2 episodes a week, which is great. He also runs peer advisory groups in the sense that he creates masterminds of lawyers who work together to expand their practices, expand their reach, and succeed. And one of the things I know from my Be the Best Divorce Lawyer Academy, I find that when we are in our group coaching group session, when you have that gel of just more than one person teaching or you on your own in a silo, when you bring some really great minds together, magical stuff can happen. And so Steve can be reached at Steve at Fretzin, and Steve is STEV, and Fretzin is FRET. We say ZIN. Americans say Z. So that's Steve at Fretzin.com. And if you reach out to him there and say that you heard this episode, he will send you a copy of his latest book, which is Legal Business Development Isn't Rocket Science, which has great tips for getting really great clients. So welcome, Steve, after that
Hey,
intro.
that was a good intro. Thank you, Val.
So, Steve, when we were just chatting just before I turned the record button on, we were talking about one of the things that I found really interesting is that, for divorce lawyers, well, first of all, in the marketing piece, is that unlike, say, a personal injury firm or somebody who has repeat clients all the time, most of the time when we are divorce lawyers, we don't really have that same client coming back through the door. Obviously in personal injury too, but if someone has a working relationship with a doctor or something, they get repeat business. And
Right.
so, and then you had indicated that, yeah, you've actually worked with lots of divorce lawyers, divorce attorneys over the years. So I'm super curious to hear, for my audience, how for our listeners, like what your advice is for specifically for divorce lawyers. And then also I was hoping you could even, because a lot of lawyers, as we know, they are struggling financially, they're overwhelmed, they're overworked, they haven't had a vacation in forever, they have no juice left. And so, if someone is going out on their own or found themselves in that place, I would love to hear what your top tips are, for people in that position.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to cover all of that and anything else you want to throw at me along the way.
Great.
This is all I do all day is work with attorneys to help them to grow the practice of their dreams, live that well-balanced life, and be that lawyer, someone who's confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. And
Wow.
to answer your first question, obviously every area of law, litigation, transactional, and the list goes on, they all have different ways of getting business. They all have different ways of how they're going to bring in new clients. And with divorce, there's also a lot of ways, and there's marketing channels, right? There's direct advertising and things you
Yeah.
can do. But most of the attorneys I work with want to do it more naturally, more holistically through their own efforts in their own time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say the 2 top ways that divorce lawyers are getting business, and the ones I work with, we try to focus our energies on this. Number one is client referrals. So
Yep.
I just had not really, but let's say I had a terrible divorce, but I got through it and my lawyer was there with me the whole way and made it work. And okay,
Yep.
I don't forget those kinds of things. So anytime I'm at the church, the temple, the club, the whatever, and
Yep.
anyone tells me anything about their situation where there's a potential divorce, the first thing I'm going to say is, hey, you have to talk to Val, you have to
Yep.
talk to Bob, whoever it is that represented me well. And that's how people are getting to their divorce attorney is through
Yep.
the client, being reminded of
Yeah.
a good experience or reasonable experience. That's one of the two top ways.
Well, and that's just like the good old fashioned word of mouth situation.
Yeah.
And the thing is people want to be helpful. And so if someone they care about or someone that they know is going through something like that, they're like, whoa, okay, wait, if you need an attorney, if you need a lawyer, then here's a person I recommend. I know for our firm, that's a huge portion of where our work comes from, which is why, of course, we want to have these happy clients who go around talking about how great their
Yeah,
lawyer
right. I mean, the
is.
best you could do is try to make them happy during a terrible, terrible time.
Yes,
And if you handle things in a professional way, if you handle things in a way where, maybe the outcome wasn't ideal, but it never is, but they at least felt you were responsive and that you were professional and you did the best you could do under the circumstances, they're going to want to recommend you to others. So that's number one. The
yeah,
other one, and this is the one that really needs to sink in with anyone listening right now,
yeah.
is you need to develop some top tier referral sources. And I call them
Mm,
strategic partners. And
yes,
the reality is that not only are they not all created equal, but there are specific types of professions that lend itself to being able to refer a divorce attorney more regularly. So we'd like to think, hey, if I just go out and network with anybody, that's going to get me referrals. And that's not necessarily the case. So,
right.
for example, right in divorce, financial planners, estate planning attorneys, therapists, people that are in the weeds with clients where there's money involved, or like
Yeah,
accountants, right? People that are dealing with that, they're going to be maybe the first to hear about it. And then even then, they're not all created equal, right? There's going to be some that are interested in putting their clients in front of the right people. And there's others that are just going to be, again, just cranking out work and not really thinking about their clients in any kind of valuable, helpful way. So
right,
we want to find the right profession. Then we want to find the right person who gets it within that profession. And there's ways to then qualify who are the right ones for you to network with. And again, feed them and they'll feed you, and
right.
that's a great situation to be in.
Right. And it's great that you should say that because basically, I think about the mistakes I've made when I was, first out on my own. I remember sponsoring an event, which really hit me in the wallet hard at the time. And in retrospect, that was so dumb because the event was it was a dragon boating team, which was a nice thing to do, sure. But my banner was up there. But people who are on a dragon boating team aren't looking for a divorce lawyer necessarily, but maybe people who are in therapy. Or one of the other ones I was thinking of is, what about like realtors? Is that another possibility
Yeah,
where,
realtors, absolutely. Yeah, I've got to get out of here where I need to get a new home. And,
yeah,
realtors are in some cases shakers and movers, and they're going to be on the front lines of knowing that someone maybe has a problem and needs some help.
yeah, another one I was thinking too was mortgage brokers. And again, not
Yeah.
all mortgage brokers are created equally. And if you go to the right mortgage broker, they can often help families restructure their finances in a way that allows both of them to possibly get into another property rather than having somebody in the rental market, after their house sells or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to share one question that lawyers can ask when let's say you're networking with a financial planner. All right. And you're having a lovely lunch, you're getting to know each other, everything's going swimmingly. And at some point near the end of the meeting, if you could slip this question in, it's really going to help you identify how powerful this relationship could be. And the
Hmm.
question is this, just out of curiosity, Val, like in an average year, how often are you running across clients who have a need for a prenup or need for a divorce, and then they're coming to you with it? If the answer is zero, it's never happened, it never will, that's very different than, yeah, generally it's about 5 to 10 a year that I'm
Right.
having to deal with that situation. Then obviously the follow-up is, well, what do you do with that, with those folks? And they either have someone
Oh,
or they
that's good.
don't, they either give or they don't. But that's a great way to qualify, hey, I should spend more time with this financial planner because there's something there, or this person doesn't get it and may never get it. And, it was a great lunch, but maybe I'm not going to
Right.
invest too much time with that person moving forward.
Oh, that makes sense because, of course, lawyers especially, well, I'm sure all professionals, but of course, I'm thinking about lawyers. One of the things that we really have limited is resources in terms of whether that be money, time, or energy. So if you are thinking, okay, I'm going to go do this lunch, okay, you want to make sure that you are utilizing it appropriately. And that's, I mean, that's something that I wasted my energy on over and over again. Just kind of, I was almost like throwing a bunch of effort at the wall and hoping maybe something would stick and then not having it stick.
Yeah.
So I really like that question. So essentially, if you are networking with somebody, you are having at lunch, hey, how many times do you come across? That's a great question. So, you know, in the course of a year, I like it that you put that in a timeline. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, in a course of a year, how many times, you know, do you come across people who, you know, require a lawyer, a family lawyer for, you know, a prenup, marriage agreement, divorce, separation, that kind of stuff? Great question.
Yeah.
And then I like what you said with the follow-up question is if they say 5, 10, or whatever that is. Oh, and what do you do in that situation? Or how do you ask that question specifically, that follow-up question?
Well, the follow-up is simply, you know, if they say, yeah, like probably 10 times a year. Well, so how do you currently manage, you know, the need for that type of assistance? Now they're going to say, well, I have a divorce attorney I've been referring. Okay, tell me more about that. And that's someone who they think is the best thing since sliced bread, and they would never send anyone anywhere else. And they
Right,
send them a ton of work back. That might be a tough relationship to break into versus, you know, I just tell them they need to go find a lawyer and good luck. Right. Well, that's a
right.
very different story where you could step in and go, well, listen, I have a thought, and right, you know where I'm going.
Yes.
You know, maybe we get to know each other better. I'd love to be able to send you, you know, half of the clients I work with as a divorce attorney need a new financial planner
Yep.
because they're splitting up and they got to split their money up and all
Yep.
that. So maybe there's a potential to work together here. Would you be open to that? Oh my God, that'd be so great. And
Right.
now you're onto something. Well, think about this as a divorce attorney. If you had 5 or 10 of those relationships providing 5, 10 or more matters a year to you,
Oh my
that
gosh.
adds up, right?
It really does add up, you know. I mean, we don't actually need a ton of clients to make our firms work, our law practices work. You know, you want those great clients that are going to come to you. But yeah, it really does add up when you have those strategic relationships. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, yay, that's a gold. And then, of course, the second piece I wanted to ask you about again, you know, when I went out on my own and opened up my own practice, I thought, okay, you know, I can practice law. I'm kind of getting my, well, they say that it takes 5 years to really get an understanding of the law and be able to think, okay, I can do this. I think it took me 10, but I didn't. So I just thought, okay, I was working for these old boys and wasn't happy in the firms I was working in, wasn't making great money. I thought, gosh, I can go on my own, right? Like, why wouldn't I do this? So I go hang out my own shingle, and I had no idea what I was getting into. And I think that's a with the lawyers I connect with, and particularly the junior lawyers, the more junior lawyers I connect with, like they're working long hours, making terrible money. They're completely stressed. They have no control over their work day. So there's absolutely like no reason why like why wouldn't they go out on their own? Like there's nothing to lose, but yet they don't know what they're getting into. And so I'd be really interested if you could, you know, I think my listeners would really love to hear from you. Like, what would you say, like the top 5, you know, if it was up to Steve, the top 5 must do's?
Well, I'd say number one would be don't do it alone, meaning that you need to have some lawyer mentors. You may need to
Oh,
hire a coach. You may need to hire someone to help you get organized. And I just was speaking with a lawyer this morning who went out on his own. It's been a few years and it's been tough and
oh,
he's really struggled. And I said, you know, I asked, you know, who have you been to? He goes, well, I'm not really talking with many people. And I go, well, that's a problem. So
yeah.
there are lawyers like yourself, Val, who have done it, made the mistakes, and are willing to take some time, an hour or two, to mentor, maybe more. And like, I have a friend of mine right now who has everything that he researched about insurance, about space, about phones, about everything on a spreadsheet. He did all the research and he's willing to meet with lawyers to say, hey, here's a spreadsheet that has all of the automations you're going to need, all of the software you're going to need.
Oh, that's
So like,
amazing.
yeah. So there are people that are willing, and I'm willing in most cases to talk for half an hour, to
Yeah.
give people advice, to offer resources, to look at
Yeah.
automations so that you can start a firm and not make years of mistakes. There's ways to do
Oh,
it if you have the
yeah.
right people in your corner. So I would say that would be number one is don't do it alone.
Yeah.
You can be alone, you can be a solo, but don't do it alone. There are friends and relationships of people that would be willing to spend some time with you to make
Yeah.
sure you go down the best paths.
Yeah. People have made all the mistakes so that they don't have to.
Right.
I was just talking to a lawyer, speaking of efficiencies, I was just talking to a younger lawyer the other day, and we have the software that computes support in Canada. It's called DivorceMate. It's like a must have if you practice family law. And this guy practices exclusively family law, but it costs some money. He didn't have that software. I'm like, it actually has templates for generating court documents. It is, oh my gosh, worth its money in gold. And he's just like, oh yeah, no, I don't have that yet. So that's great. So get that help. Like, don't go it alone. Get that mentorship. Great idea. And again, someone who's been in the trenches, made the mistakes, so that you can short circuit all of that. I mean, we know that the most successful people in the world, they have that. They always have that, those people that they work with, those mentors, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are lots of books on how to start a business, but that doesn't help like having a mentor or a lawyer that has built a successful practice in your corner that can just say, hey, no, you don't want to do that. Do
Yeah.
this. This is what
Yeah,
I did. I made
exactly.
that mistake already. You don't have to.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Which is a good lead in, Val, to point number 2, which
Yeah.
is it's so important to have a plan, to
Yeah.
write a plan. And again, there are mentors and coaches and people and books and ways to get information on how to write a plan.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm going to decide right now that I'm going to make a souffle. I've never
Yeah.
made one before, but I'm
Yeah.
just going to say, I'm going to make a souffle today. And I don't even know what ingredients. I don't know what order. I don't know what temperature. I don't know how to cook.
Yep.
Not going to come out right, no matter what I do.
Great
all right?
analogy. It's going to be a mess.
It's going to be a mess, and
Yeah.
someone's cleaning it up, and it ain't me. I'll get my
Yeah.
teenager on that. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about then is you need to consider a business plan, a marketing plan. You need to have something written down that says, here's the direction you need to go. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. Right. So that you're not just going off in any particular direction. It's not going to play out the way you want it to.
Well,
So
and I love what you're saying there, because again, a lot of people, particularly like in family law, there's always an emergency. Somebody's mitten's gotten lost, or when people see things as an emergency, right?
yeah, always.
There's very few actual emergencies, but and the thing is, you can actually spend your day spinning, everywhere, all over the place, and kind of going, oh yeah, maybe I should consider thinking about having a structure, having a plan that I want to be able to execute.
Yeah.
So when you say a plan, are you talking about an overall business plan, or what would some of the elements of the plan be, Steve?
Yeah, I was kind of going for both. So like the business plan would be looking at, what you're looking to accomplish year 1, year 2, whatever year you're in, and what you need operationally, what you need technology, what you need from a insurance standpoint. And yeah, marketing and business development should be a big part of that plan.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a great book recommendation is a book called Traction.
Oh,
By
yeah, I
Gino
love that
Wickman.
book.
Okay, great
Yeah.
book. And there's a number
Great
of
book.
there's a particular form in there called a Vision Traction Organizer.
Yeah.
I think it's still called that.
I think
And I
it
do
is
that for
VTO.
myself. I'm a solo. I do that for myself every year. I
Yeah.
look at it every month, every quarter, and it really
Beautiful.
just breaks it down. What's my 3-year plan? What's my 1-year plan? How do I break that into quarters and into actual daily tasks? And that's going to be a big help to people who are looking to say, yeah, I get the big picture, but that's not what I have a problem. I can say I want to do $1 million. The
Yeah.
problem is, how do I break that down into what I have to do every day? And that's
Yeah.
where I think that type of a plan would help.
It's great you should mention that book, because that book often, like it says, it concentrates on where there's a team of maybe 5 to 10 people at least, a certain amount of revenue at least. And I have a much smaller, I don't have 10 people on my management team. I've got 10 people in total. And yet what I found is implementing the strategies in that book has been just so powerful in terms of, how you have this task that you should get around to, but you never really get around to it. Like, I don't know, working on your website, for example, right? And then all of a sudden it's 2 months and it's 6 months and a year goes by. Well, what it does is it really focuses upon the requirement that if when you're meeting with your team, even if it's just with one other person or even yourself, that, I made this commitment to myself to get this done in the past week. And when you have that same time that you're going through those commitments that you've made, then you really do start to see the momentum.
Oh, hey, it's me. Interrupting a little bit because I want videos like this to reach more people. So if you are enjoying what you see, if you're finding it helpful, please hit the subscribe button, which is somewhere up there. And also tell me, what was the biggest takeaway you had with respect to this video? Leave it in the comments below and I will answer every comment, every question, because that's what I do.
And I think it also helps prioritize, because we think, everything is important is an equal, and it's not.
Oh my gosh.
The example that they give in there is rocks. And so if you look at that example of filling a cylinder with rocks, pebbles, sand, and water, what do you put in first? And people always get confused. Well, no, you put the rocks in first. Those are the most important things. Yeah. And then if you have time after the rocks, you can look at the pebbles and the sand and the water. But people, fill it with water and sand and unimportant things that waste time. And then they never get to the priorities, like getting the website done, if that's a priority. And of course, it drags out. And meanwhile, you're losing business potentially. Yeah,
tons of lost opportunity there. And I mean, a lot of lawyers I know, they are absolutely attached to their email programs, and they let their email inbox run their lives. And there's a time for answering your email, absolutely, but there's times to really focus on strategically, what do I need to do to bring my business forward? So that's great. And of course, I'm taking notes here. Other points, so you've got, don't go it alone, right? Make sure you have mentorship, more mentorship than just a book or podcast. Like someone, and then
have a plan. Have a plan. And then the third one would be, and this is, this might sound self-serving, but learn business development. I mean, you don't get clients without getting clients. Like, you can't do the legal work without the clients. You kind of need them. So if your phone isn't ringing off the hook, which it's not for most people, you need to learn business development, whether that's books, direct coaching, whether that's watching YouTube videos. I don't really care. You're not learning it in law school. You're not learning it at the law firm level. So how are you learning it? Well, you don't want to learn it, because that's not why you became a lawyer. You didn't become a lawyer to sell legal services. So let's just avoid it. Well, guess what? Now you don't have any business. So you need to educate yourself on how to do it and how to do it efficiently. Try to make less mistakes than Val and I did when we started out, right? And I think in my second book, which is the Attorney's Networking Handbook, I say right up front, no one has wasted more time networking than I have. I was the master of wasting time and meeting with the Avon lady, meeting with the Amway salesman, meeting with the life insurance guy who wants 10 names out of me right away. All that stuff I went through, and I had to figure out. And fortunately, I wrote things down and I learned from my lessons, and I was able to actually write a book based off of making mistakes and then making improvements, and to the point where I could teach it and then write a book about it. But that's really the key, is become a student of business development and marketing and social media.
Yeah, that's so important. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that, so much, because, again, going back into the olden days, like, I do great work for clients. This is one example. I do great work for a client, and then I'd kind of really hope that they'd leave me a review, right? Just kind of hope and pray, and then check my reviews, and they were good, but they weren't a lot of them. But meanwhile, I'm killing myself trying to do really great work. And then I listened to a podcast, or I read somewhere, or I can't remember what it was. I was mentored by somebody. I don't remember where it came from. They said, ask for reviews and make it easy. What? So all we do when we have a thrilled client, which we do a lot of, we have a pre-prepped email that basically says, hey, Joanne, it's a pleasure acting for you. And if you'd be so kind as to leave us a review, it would allow us to reach more people, to help more people who've had similar circumstances to yours. And, and here's the link. So you make it really easy. But that was something I learned through business development, something that never occurred to, in retrospect, it seems really obvious, but it wasn't. And so I kind of burned through 10 years of working really hard without that dividend, and what I find is, again, people often come to us because of the referrals, and I checked your reviews. I checked your reviews. I checked your reviews, right? Something I learned from business development. That's great.
Yeah. So I think that's number 3 is really taking the time to take care of the business development, the marketing, the business side of things. And if you become, and I train people to be, assassins at this, so that whether they're at a firm, whether they're on their own, they're not up at night wondering where the next client's going to come from, how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to take care of their family. they're going to have business because they get how to go out and get business and make it proactive. And the things we talked about right at the beginning, leveraging clients more effectively for reviews and for referrals, leveraging strategic partners, making sure that your website and your social media are building your brand so people are seeing you and you're staying top of mind. These are things that are not hard to learn, not rocket science, as the book says, not easy, but not rocket science.
Right. It has more to do with consistency, doesn't it, Steve?
It really does. And I'd rather you be good than perfect. I'd rather you post once a week on LinkedIn than not at all, even if it isn't the perfect post. So get comfortable with doing something versus nothing, and something leads to more, and you just become more comfortable. And as you become more comfortable, you can accelerate that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Oh, that's awesome. And so learning biz development. Now, what about, so we've talked about like things relating to the practice. And then if you were thinking, okay, if, again, thinking about divorce lawyers and us running on the hamster wheel a lot of the time, if you were to give my listeners some advice about, the personal side of things, like what would be something you would suggest that someone who's going out on their own, or they have their practice for a while, how to manage, ensuring that they too have a life outside of, being, sitting at their desk or at a courtroom.
So if we're going through 5 tips, Val, we don't want to skip ahead. Okay.
I don't want to skip ahead.
We've got one more tip, and then we're going to answer that exact question. That exact question's number 5. Okay. I worked this whole thing out. Okay.
Good.
Number 4 is automate and delegate everything. You should be billable at, and I'm not going to say a specific number, but on the low end, whatever, $250. On the high end, I've got a lawyer doing $1,200 an hour. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're billable. And so why are you doing things that you can pay someone $10, $20 an hour to do? A bookkeeper, someone to send out bills, someone to track that, an assistant, virtual or not, that can handle all the administrative burden that you're doing every day.
Yeah.
And marketing even, I've got a full-time marketing person in Bogota, Colombia that makes 25, I pay 25 grand a year. That's not a lot for a full-time employee that is handling all my social media, video creation, event promotion, blogs. I mean, everything and anything you can imagine around business development and marketing support is being done by someone else. I create content. That's wonderful. Now, what am I doing with it? Well, I'm handing it off to someone that's doing with it for me. Okay. Now I look like a superstar.
Well, and because you have a team or your person has you looking like a superstar. And I always think, it's not doing a client, and I share with my clients, and this is a really good point, is that I will say, for example, when it comes to compiling your financial statement, you don't want me and my hourly rate doing that. A, I don't like it. B, I'm not good at it. C, you want my support team to do that with you. Because it's a fraction of the investment. It's got to get done. But what I want when I'm working with you, I want, you to have me that, because I'm doing that higher level work, right? Rather than standing at the photocopier or the scanner or whatever, filling out little boxes on a financial statement.
But I mean, and then that leads into automation where I'm not taking in checks anymore. I don't deposit checks. I don't have checks. I don't see checks. Everything is credit card and ACH. And people are totally comfortable now, by the way, paying 3%, administrative fee or whatever we're calling it for, so that we don't have to pay for our credit card use. We're now passing that cost on to the clients, and they're fine with it. Or if they don't want to do that, give me your routing number, your check and routing number, and we'll do it that way. But everything is automated now. All my clients are paying me monthly. And I don't have to deal with it. All I get is the reports from my bookkeeper that I have no AR.
Yeah.
Okay. And great. I know with divorce, like you guys have collections, that's the worst. So anything you can do to automate administrative burden, collections. Here's another one. This is an absolute game changer. Calendly, Acuity. These are these auto schedulers.
Oh, yes.
I no longer go back and forth. Hey, Val, when do you want to meet? Well, how's Friday, at 2:00? No, that's no good for you. And we do this 5-6 times back and forth. And how much time is that killing? I'm saving on a ballpark around an hour a day, every single day, by not having to do that. Everything's done through my auto schedulers. I use Lawmatics, and I've got everything customized with forms, and everything's customized to my website. And it's so amazing the automations that are out there right now that can make you streamline so you look super.
Well, yeah, that's so true. And it really makes sense that because you have that automated and they're not putzing around again, wasting your time trying to find a date. I use Clio,
Yeah,
which is, law office management, and it's connected to my Calendly calendar,
sure.
right? So
Yeah.
if somebody, so when this interview, for example, was booked, it populated into my Clio calendar. So I didn't accidentally have, I'm
Yep.
double booked over here. So that didn't happen. And also, yeah, it's just so, so powerful. It's a perfect example of a tool that just saves so much time.
I mean, here's something crazy. I just tried for the first time this thing called Chat GBN, or what's that
Chat
called?
GBQ or something.
GBT or something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
Chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just asked it to write an article for me, 750 words, and it did. And I'm
Yeah.
going to update it. I'm going to own it. I'm going to make it my own. But instead of it taking me an hour to write an article, because I can write a good solid article in about an hour,
Yeah.
I think it took me about 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get a high
Right.
quality article that I
Right.
can put on my website that's going to help me with SEO and give good information to lawyers that are looking. It's called the top 10 mistakes lawyers make after their first year in practice.
Oh
And it
my
just
gosh.
pumped
Yeah.
this out, and it's right on the money, but I have to put my spin on it and I have to put my name on. Yeah, I want to make it my own. So, but I didn't have to write it, the whole thing. I just had to type in, write 750 words on top mistakes lawyers make after the first year of practice, and bang, there's a great article that I
That's
just pulled
yeah.
together.
That's great. And I'll make sure that I link that into the show notes. I've been hearing everything about this in just the last 2 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
And the thing is like maybe a divorce lawyer might think, well, why have to do content creation? Well, the reason why you'd want to create content that's on your website, social media platforms, on your Google My Business platform, especially in my view, is that what it does is it puts you up as an authority. And, so for example, if you're focusing on custody or family law generally, well, when you have that content out there that basically says, here's this topic, and we're going to talk about, how to keep your kids out of conflict and divorce, or whatever the things that your clients have struggled with, well, that sets you up as an authority. And then when you're the authority, well, that's when people come to you. And that's when you get to increase your hourly rate, because you do become that authority as well. Like you are that authority. What's happening? Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Really good suggestions there.
Yeah. So tip number 4, automate and delegate everything you can. Consider you went through law school, you're gaining experience, you're highly billable and doing stuff that you just shouldn't be doing. So one thought would be to make a list of everything you do in an average day, average couple days, write it all down and track it, and just say, look, I was just shopping for this, or I was just doing my billing, or I was doing my bookkeeper, and I was doing this administrative task, that administrative task. Write it all down, and then realize, look, there are people for $8 to $10 an hour right now, VAs, that can handle all that stuff for you for nothing, for a couple $100 a month, maybe. Right.
Yeah,
and meanwhile, all of that extra time leads me to my last of 5 points. Okay.
Thank you.
Which is, you've used people to learn to not make mistakes that they made. You have a business development plan or business plan in place. You're learning business development and marketing. You're automating and delegating everything. That allows you to take better care of yourself. That's the number 5 point, is you cannot be a successful lawyer if your health is failing, if you're stressed out, if you're depressed, if you're all these things, you're working 60, 70 hours, a week, you're not going to be successful. Okay. Or happy, or both. So really need to consider, how are you taking care? It's like the airline, when you're on an airplane and they say, hey, if there's a problem, the oxygen's going to come down, give it to yourself first and then give it to your child.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
You need to take care of yourself, or you're not going to be taking care of your clients. You're not going to be taking care of your family. Anyone that's important to you is going to feel the end result of your lack of attention to yourself.
Yeah. And, I think that is so important. Like, and I'll share this with you, Steve. I was just at the courthouse the other day in person, and I saw some colleagues I haven't seen for about 2 years and a bit. And I was really shocked about how rough some of them looked. Like, just, wow. Like, just, and it just breaks my heart, because, I mean, really good, well-meaning, hardworking people who really care about the work they do. And I'm thinking, where were you in this? And one of the things that I know is that when I applied business strategies to my law practice, so I used to, I'm not kidding, my butt would hit my seat at 8 in the morning. I would go through till 6, like at least 4 days a week. And then on Fridays, I would knock off like at 4 or something. And I would eat at my desk. I would work right through. And then I'd come home and I'd be so tired that it's almost like I couldn't even see straight or string a sentence together, which impacted my family life in a huge way.
Yeah.
But when I started incorporating systems and looking strategically and applying business concepts to my law firm, well, now I don't see clients. I still have a practice. I don't see clients until 10 in the morning because that allows me to get up, do my morning practice, walk in the woods, talk to my dog, do all that stuff. Right. So if I have to start at 9:30, it's like, oh no, big tragedy. And then I take my last client at 4, and that's it. And I only do that Monday to Thursday. On Fridays, it's my business development working on the practice day. And oh wait, I make way more money than I did back then when I was killing myself, and of course a lot happier. Right. So yeah.
It's all possible. We just have to be thoughtful about it and realize that, there are ways to be happy, but it's going to take effort and it's going to take systems and process in a proper mindset to do it. But it's all there, and you don't have to get out of law if you're unhappy. You just maybe have to fix what is going on in the law and in your life. And again, if you want to get out of law and go do something else, I mean, a lot of lawyers do that, and that's great.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of lawyers leaving the law because it's not manageable for them with all of the problems that they're dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's actually for a lot of them, like they got into law to be able to help people, but they're finding that they're too stressed to help, and didn't realize how hard it was going to be.
Yeah.
So taking that from the top, don't go alone. Don't do it alone. Get mentors, write a plan, have a plan. You mentioned the book Traction. I'll put that in the show notes too. So important. Great book. And then you've got the learning business development, the importance of that, and the automating, delegating absolutely everything that you can. You mentioned using calendar apps so that you're not putzing back and forth. No, Monday at that time, that doesn't work. Like, what a waste of time.
No doubt.
And then, of course, you mentioned like taking, care of yourself, like whatever that means for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think health and wellness, eating, exercise, if you have a Snickers bar in one pocket and M&Ms in the other, and that's how you're taking care of yourself during the day, you're not getting proper sleep. You're not taking care of having someone to talk to. If you need a therapist or someone to talk to and vent, there's so many, meditation. I mean, there's so many different ways to take care of yourself. But if you do the first 4 things that we had on the list, that's going to help you handle number 5 better than if you don't have a plan, you don't have mentors, you don't have business, like you're worrying all the time. I mean, that's not a long-term strategy for being happy in anything.
Yeah, that's right. If you're going into chaos every single day, you're not going to be able to have that happiness that we all so want to desire, and, won't have that fulfilled life that we want.
Yep.
So, well, Steve, thank you so much for joining us today. What you've shared is really great. I know my listeners are going to have such great value from what you've shared. And again, that's Steve, Steve, at Fretzin, Fretzin or ZIN.com. If you reach out to him and say you heard us having this discussion, he will send you that book. And again, can you remind me of the book title? I have it written down here.
Legal Business Development Isn't Rocket Science.
That's right,
it's 250 ways to grow your law practice in less time and less energy. And it's a bestseller in 4 countries. And I'm proud of the writing I do. And I try to be very tactical and actionable in how I give tips. It's not going to be any kind of, 20,000 foot view of anything. It's all about, here's the, you want to work a conference better. You want to build better relationships. You want to close more business, whatever it might be. I've got a chapter on it, LinkedIn. And you take that information and I break it into here's what you actually say and do. So you don't have to kind of make it up. You can just follow the directions.
Well, that is great. Oh, that is great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
If you found this video helpful, and I hope you did, please give it a thumbs up. Because if you do that, then this video will be able to reach more people. And as well, if you want to stay in closer touch with me, please ring the little bell icon so that you can subscribe to this channel. This is Val. Much, much love.